Hi, my spooky friends. How are you today? I hope you are doing fantabulous. Welcome back to the Crochet Caution Tape, or welcome to the Crochet Caution Tape, where we talk about true crime, dark history, mysteries, and all things spooky. I'm Erica, and today we are going to continue to be working on our Vine charger. I'm really loving it. And we are gonna go back to the 1940s, post World War II, Hollywood. I'm going to I'm gonna do like a little sorry, a little theme. That's the word. Theme for the next few videos where we're gonna be talking about classic Hollywood starts. Today we are going to discuss Elizabeth Short. Buckle up. So we're going to start with on January 15th of 1947. There was a mother who was walking her daughter, just doing an early morning walk, whenever she sees something a little suspicious. At first, she thinks that she sees a broken mannequin in a vacant lot, just laying on the ground. But as they got closer, she immediately realized that it was not a mannequin. It was, in fact, the dead body of a woman who had been cut in half. Now, she immediately ran off, found a phone, and called the police there. There was no blood at the scene. The entire body had been drained of blood. The investigation into this mysterious dead body was led by the LA police force. The FBI asked to help with this because at first they did not have any idea who this was. And it was a very gruesome murder. Oh yeah, trigger warning. We're going to be discussing murder, brutality, and then very gruesome details. So, sorry, the trigger warning is a little bit in. But, oh, the police were able to collect fingerprints from the dead body, and within 56 minutes of receiving the blurred fingerprints by sound photo, which was a primitive fax machine used by news sources in the 1940s. Oh, I feel like I got something in my throat. They identified the dead body was that of 22-year-old Elizabeth Short. Elizabeth Short was a Hollywood hopeful. She had moved to LA to pursue her dream of acting. She was not an actress yet. She was pursuing her dream. She was working as a waitress at the time. Now, I've not said what Elizabeth Short was known as and is still known as. So if some of you have guessed, bravo! But Elizabeth Short has been known as the Black Dahlia. She is known as the Black Dahlia for her penchant of wearing sheer black clothes and At the time of her murder, the movie The Blue Dahlia was very popular. So, with her penchant of wearing black, she just became known as the Black Dahlia. Elizabeth Prince appeared twice in the FBI's search. One was because she had applied for a clerk position at the commissary of the Army's Camp Cook in California in 1943. And the second time, she was arrested 7 months earlier for underage drinking. They also had her mugshot on file for this arrest. Now, with how her body was cut in half, the police force suspected that sorry, had skills in dissection, so they were thinking the medical field. So one of their first places to stop to question people was the University of Southern California Medical School. They had interviewed everybody there, and they had none of them were viable suspects. There was an autopsy performed on Elizabeth's body, of course. The marks that were found on her body indicates that she had been bound and tortured before she had been murdered. There were pieces of flesh that were cut away from her body, and the pieces of flesh were that of a tattoo on her thigh, and for some reason it was placed in her hoo-ha. The body was cleanly cut in half at the waist, and the official cause of death through the autopsy was a cerebral hemorrhage and shock due to blows to the face. So she was beaten, as well as drained of blood and cut in half, and all of the torturous stuff. Elizabeth had just moved to LA the year before in 1946. She was trying to get acting roles. She rented. She rented a room behind the Florentine Gardens nightclub on Hollywood Boulevard. This is where she stayed, little apartment. Now, her body was found on January 15th of 1947. On January 24th of 1947, a manila envelope addressed to the Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles papers was sent. The letter was made from using cutouts from newspapers and magazines, kind of like the stereotypical Hollywood ransom note, I guess. The letter said, "Here is Dahlia's belongings." Included in with this letter was Elizabeth's birth certificate, some business cards, photographs, names written on a piece of paper, and an address book. All of the items were cleaned with gasoline as the body had been cleaned. So this led with having the personal belongings of Elizabeth. The letter was cleaned the same way the body had been cleaned. it was reasonable. The police believed that the letter was actually sent from the killer. The police used the little phone book that had been delivered to research who Elizabeth had been in contact with. They contacted 75 men were in there. The majority of them claimed to have only known Elizabeth for a very, very brief time. Did they, Beth? Of course anybody would say that. No, I didn't know her. No, I don't know how. The precise cuts that were made on Elizabeth's body, police thought it was someone in the medical field. None of the students at the University of Southern California Medical School, none of their students were near the crime scene. They were all interviewed. They were all cleared. And background checks, everything. They did everything to these people, and they came. So, along with the things that we have already mentioned about the state of Elizabeth's body, she also had organs removed. Her uterus was removed. There were long gashes that extended from the corners of her mouth outwards, which most people, it's called the Glasgow smile. But a lot of people see this and they think the Joker from Batman. The Glasgow. They make an eerie smile. Her intestines were also removed and placed neatly underneath the lower half of her body. Her stomach was found to be full of feces. It is unsure if whether the killer had placed that in there or if she had been forced to eat it before her death. Now, the murder of the Black Dahlia remains unsolved to this day, but there are so many theories on who did it. And the Black Dahlia has, you see all these random clips, there's movies about the Black Dahlia, there's TV shows about the Black Dahlia, there's books about the Black Dahlia. She'd even came in on the American Horror Story Season 1, The Murder House. She made an appearance in that. So many theories about what happened to her. Some believe that the Black Dahlia murder was linked to the Cleveland torso murders in Cleveland, Ohio, that occurred between 1934 and 1938, where the Cleveland torso killer had killed 13 people, at least 13 people, dismembered them, decapitated them while some were alive. Just, what? Only 2 of the Cleveland torso murder victims have been identified. There's also another link that they are trying to make with the Black Dahlia and the murder of Jeanne French in Los Angeles that happened on February 10th of 1947, so about a month later. Jeanne French was found in a vacant lot, like the Black Dahlia had been, nude, with massive pre- and post-mortem injuries, like the Black Dahlia had been. This became known as the red lipstick murder because there was a cryptic message written in red lipstick on Jeanne's abs that said, F, actual word, UBD. And she had been stomped to death. The torture, the brutality, and all of this is just, it's crazy. It's insane. Like, what goes through people's heads whenever they're doing this stuff? Okay. Another theory is that of retired LA police detective Steve Hodel. I cannot talk and count this right. Now, Steve Hodel strongly believes that the murderer of the Black Dahlia was his father, George Hodel. He strongly believes this, and he's done the research, and let's just get into this. After George Hodel's death, Steve had to go through and sort through his belongings. He wasn't very close with his father. His parents had been divorced. Yeah. But whenever he was going through his father's belongings, he found a small photo album that was, it's really small. In this, the detective had found, there were photos of that were typically found in. My goodness, what am I doing? What am I doing? Oh my god. Oh, okay, we're good. We're good. Found typical stuff that you would find in a portrait. I thought I was good. I was not. There were portraits of him, his brother, his mom, his dad. Why can I not get this stitch right? It does not like me. There we go. We got it. Alright. Ugh. But yeah, there were pictures of his mom, his dad, his brothers, and just family friends were all in this photo album. Until we get to the back of the album. The back of this album, there were 2 pictures of a young woman. The eyes were cast downwards, and the woman had curly black hair. And during his investigation, he had discovered that Elizabeth had been given a hemicorporectomy, which is where the body is sliced right beneath the lumbar spine, and it's the only spot in the human body where the body can be cut in half without having to go through bones. This was an actual medical procedure that was taught to doctors in the 1930s, which is why was this a thing? Why were they teaching doctors how to cut people straight in half? That doesn't make sense. They were doing it. Now, this procedure was taught in the 1930s, and that just so happened to be the time that dear Georgie was in medical school. So he was taught how to do this procedure. The letters that were sent to the press and to the police claiming to be from the murderer, there were some that were actually in handwriting, not just, the paper, the clippings from the paper. But the handwriting, Steve was like, this looks an awful lot like my father's handwriting, and he even sent it out to, he was a police detective, so he had connections. He sent it off to a handwriting expert, And the experts said that it is a very strong likelihood that the letters were written by George. He also, during going through his father's belongings, found receipts that were from days, just a few days before Elizabeth was found. This is like a 50-year difference, and it's just like crazy. Like, what? Why do you still have? So, this receipt was for 10 5-pound bags of concrete. Now, these bags were the same size, the same brand, the same everything that were found near Elizabeth's body and were thought to be what was used to carry Elizabeth's body to the crime scene. Like pictures of somebody that looks strikingly like Elizabeth in a photo album. Trained in how to do the procedure to cut somebody in half. Handwriting is matching. Has a strong likelihood. It has a receipt for the same type of concrete bags that were found near Elizabeth's body. It's all adding up. I mean, so most of the physical evidence is gone over the years. The witnesses and the original cops that investigated the murder, they are all passed away. They're all gone. So, what did Steve do? Well, dear Steve, he decided to go to the family members of the witnesses and of the. Got this. We got this. Okay. The family members of the witnesses and of the police to get the different stories that were obviously told to their family members, the things that they had heard. And they interviewed their friends, their family, and anyone else that they had been in contact with where they would have discussed this case. So Steve discovered during this process, he's doing all this research after he has retired. Okay, so during his interview process, Steve had discovered that all of them had said that the police department believed that the murderer was a doctor who lived on Franklin Avenue. So, what does this mean? George was a doctor. George Hodel was a doctor. And the home that they lived in whenever the murder had happened was, in fact, on Franklin Avenue. After compiling all of his research, Steve had given all of it to the Assistant District Attorney, Stephen Kay. And after going through it, Kay believes that Steve is right. All of the evidence points to George Hodel. Kay had even said that if George had been alive, he would have put charges against him for the murder of the Black Dahlia. Excuse me. They'd even found transcripts from the original investigation whenever Kay was able to get these. Steve was not. But But the transcripts from the original investigation had even said that George Hodel was on the suspect list. Not sure why he didn't remain and all of this, but he was an original suspect. Now, all this is going on. Ooh, look at that. Put him up. There we go. How did Elizabeth's family find out about what had happened? This is absolutely awful. Reporters had telephoned Phoebe Short, who was Elizabeth's mother, and was like, "Oh, Elizabeth has won a beauty contest, and we just want to get information on her to report on her after her winning this beauty contest." So they got as much information out of Phoebe as they could, and then that's whenever they were like, "Hey, she didn't win a beauty contest. This is actually what happened. Your daughter's dead." People don't think. People are only in for what makes them, what affects them, what helps them. They do not think that their actions are going to affect somebody else or how they're going to affect somebody else. This is awful. Who would do this? It's just insane and it's awful and my God. No. So, back to good old George. Back whenever the original murder investigation was going on and George was on the suspect list, he was a strong enough contestant to be a suspect, to be the murder, that the police actually bugged his house to monitor his activities. One exchange that stuck out from all of the other recordings happened in 1950. This is a quote from George Hodel that was taken from a recording on the phone. "Realized there was nothing I could do. Put a pillow over her head and cover her with a blanket. Get a taxi. Expired 12:59. They thought there was something fishy. Anyway, now they may have figured out killed her. Supposing I did kill Black Dahlia. They couldn't prove it now. They can't talk to my secretary anymore because she's dead." Huh? Did he kill his secretary so they couldn't get any information? What did the secretary know? I got questions. I got questions. The second suspect was a man named Leslie Dillon. At one point, Leslie was a primary suspect. He worked as a bellhop, and some believe that he was contracted to kill Elizabeth by Mark Hansen. Mark Hansen was a local nightclub and movie theater owner. He worked with Dillon. There was another suspect that would have been let go. Mark Hansen was actually the original owner of the phone book that was delivered with Elizabeth's belongings. He claims that he had given Elizabeth that phone book as a gift. Elizabeth had even stayed with Hansen for a short time, a few nights. And Hansen was actually one of the last people reported to have talked with Elizabeth on January 8th. Some think that Hansen had been very much infatuated with Elizabeth, and Elizabeth did not reciprocate. She did not have any interest in him. And Mark Hansen was not used to being told no, so he wanted revenge, so the theory goes. So he's supposedly went to Leslie Dillon and told him to take care of her. In a previous line of work, Dillon had worked as a mortician assistant, where he could have learned how to drain a body of all its blood. Um, Police records state that Dillon actually knew of some of the details of the murder that had not been made public, such as the piece of flesh that had been cut away from Elizabeth's thigh was that of a tattoo of a rose. Um, Now Leslie was never charged with the crime. Obviously, like I said, this is still an unsolved murder. Um, so he was not charged with the crime. Some think that it's because of Hansen's ties to the cops and the LAPD. The department is widely known to have been very much corrupt during this time, and some think that Hansen had part of a hand in that, like paying an awful lot of money to them to keep this a secret. However, this one also provides a possible crime scene. At Astor Motel. It was a local motel in LA. We're right outside of LA. A report made by Henry Hoffman, who was the owner, on the morning of January 15th, 1947, which was also the morning that Elizabeth's body was discovered. He had gone to clean one of the cabins, and whenever he walked in, he had noticed that the entire cabin was covered in blood. The ceiling, the floor, the furniture. There was blood and fecal matter everywhere in this cabin. And then he went to a second cabin to clean the cabin. And someone had left a bundle of women's clothes wrapped in a brown paper bag covered in blood. Huh? And, and he didn't report this right away. No. Mr. Hoffman did not report this right away because he had recently been arrested for domestic violence against his wife. So he wanted to avoid some kind of interaction, any kind of interaction with the police at this time. And so he just cleaned it. The blood, the fecal matter, the bloody clothes. He just cleaned it. I don't know. There are also uncorroborated witnesses that claim a woman that resembled Elizabeth had been seen at the motel as well. So, it's still an unsolved murder. That's still an unsolved murder that. Okay. There's still an unsolved murder. Nothing has been proven. Honestly, like, the evidence, to me, I think George is a leading contender to this. But, Leslie did know some details that hadn't been mentioned, and, I don't know. I don't know. But I think everything that I've read is making me lead more towards Dr. George Hodel as the murderer. I don't know. What do do you guys think? Have you all heard any other theories on this? This is one of the most well-known unsolved murders, at least in this country. I'm not so sure about others, but it's crazy. What are your thoughts? What are your questions? What are your theories? Who do you think killed Black Dahlia? Thank you for joining me today. I always enjoy talking with you guys, my little spooky friends. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like the video, comment, I will respond, and hit the little bell notification so you get notified whenever I do post again. Share with your friends if you have other people that are interested in crocheting and talking about the spookies of the world. Please let them know. Share the love. I love you guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.